Our podcast is committed to telling history as it truly happened, the good, the bad, and the truths that are often left unsaid. Not to point blame, but to understand how Puerto Rico was shaped by global forces, and how we, as Puerto Ricans, can learn and grow today. Slavery before Spain. Slavery was not invented by Spain. It existed in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas, long before the first Spanish ship arrived in the Caribbean. In Africa, many kingdoms captured enemies in war or punished criminals with servitude, but it was not yet the system of racialized hereditary slavery that Europeans would later build. African complicity. Yes, African rulers and merchants played a role. Some sold captives from rival tribes or prisoners of war to European traders along the coast. They exchanged human lives for guns, textiles, and goods. But here's the key. Europe created the demand. Without Spain, Portugal, Britain, and others building ships, financing expeditions, and constructing a global economy of sugar, coffee, and cotton, the trade would never have reached the scale of millions. Spain's role in the Caribbean. Spain institutionalized the transatlantic slave trade. In the early 1500s, after indigenous populations collapsed from disease and forced labor, Spain turned to Africa. Through contracts called Asian tows, merchants were given permission to deliver enslaved Africans to colonies like Puerto Rico. Spain may not have invented slavery, but it transformed it into a massive racialized system tied to empire and wealth. How many came to Puerto Rico? Between the 16th and 19th centuries, historians estimate 135,000 to 150,000 Africans were brought to Puerto Rico. Smaller than Cuba or Brazil, yes, but enough to leave a permanent mark. These men, women, and children labored in sugar and coffee fields, in homes, and in cities. They carried with them rhythms, foods, religions, and languages that still live in Puerto Rico today. 5. The silence around the story. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In many places, this history isn't taught. In Puerto Rico, schools celebrate African culture but often skip over how Africans themselves were part of the trade. In the US, Puerto Ricans raised in the diaspora learn about slavery mostly through the African American experience, not the Caribbean one. And in the Black American community, the role of African rulers in selling captives is often left unspoken, not out of ignorance, but because the real machinery of slavery was created, expanded, and racialized by Europe. Why this matters today? This history explains who we are. Puerto Ricans are the product of indigenous, African, and European worlds colliding. To understand our music, our faith, our politics, even our debates about the future, we need to understand this history. It is not about pointing fingers. It is about recognizing the full truth. Africans supplied captives. Spain and Europe industrialized human bondage, and Puerto Rico was forever shaped by both. The timeline of abolition? Let's put this in perspective. Spain ended the slave trade in 1811 and abolished slavery in its own mainland territories by 1837. But in the colonies, it lasted longer. Puerto Rico finally abolished slavery in 1873, and Cuba not until 1886. In the United States, the trade was outlawed in 1808, but slavery itself continued until the 13th Amendment in 1865. So yes, Spain moved earlier on the mainland, but Puerto Ricans remained enslaved 8 years after African Americans were freed. The lesson from the past is not about blame, it is about awareness. We Puerto Ricans must know our history, all of it, to chart a stronger, wiser, and freer future. Because only when we open our eyes can we build the Puerto Rico our ancestors dreamed of. Puerto Rico, open your eyes. Subscribe, like, share, and press the notification button for more content. See you soon.